You're listening to the best, the bravest. Interviews with the FDNY's elite. Haven't had the chance to hear that theme in a while. I missed that Best the Bravest theme, and we get the chance to play it tonight, baby. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 211 of the Mike to New Haven podcast. If you haven't checked out episode 210, that was with Pete Forcelli, who, in addition to being a former New York City housing cop and NYPD detective upon the merge of the two departments in 1995, was a special agent assigned to the ATF for 20 years. He just retired last year. Interesting hearing about a career in law enforcement that between the federal and the local level spanned 34 years. So good stuff with Pete, and I do not doubt that there will be good stuff tonight for what will be volume 26 of the Best, the Bravest, interviews with the FDNY's elite, with my next guest, who saw the many fires that burned in the city of New York through not one, but two lenses. The first as a fireman, of course, in a constant race against time to put them out. The second as an investigator determined to figure out how they were started in the first place. He was a fire marshal for 26 of his 35 years on the job, and he oversaw major investigations into events like the Happy Land Social Club fire of 1990, the World Trade Center bombing of 1993, amongst others, running a very tight mission that always ran smoothly in the face of constant chaos. And that for volume 26 of the Best, the Bravest, interviews with the FDNY's elites, retired FDNY fire marshal, and former chief fire marshal, I should say, of the FDNY, Lou Garcia. Lou, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Doing well. Good to have you. Long time coming. You know, we share some mutual friends, so it was inevitable. It felt that our paths would cross, and finally they crossed definitively tonight. So the first question I'll ask you is, where'd you grow up?
Well, I'm a New York City kid. I was born in the Bronx. For a small amount of time, we moved to Miami for 4 years for various reasons regarding my sister's health. But then I came back and lived in Astoria, Queens. And from Astoria, we moved to Hollis, right on the borderline of Queens Village, and that's where I was. And went to public high schools in New York City. Went to Brooklyn Technical High School in Brooklyn, and I commuted there from first Astoria and then Queens Village or Hollis.
And when did you first get interested in the job?
Well, I went to college, was there for 2 years. I got a 2-year degree. I figured, after Brooklyn Tech, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I took the electrical course. That was great. But later on in life, that school was great, by the way. Well, later on in life, I used whatever knowledge I got from that school in fire investigation and firefighting, because it had to do with building construction and electrical problems and things of that nature. The training was fantastic. I got at Brooklyn Tech. A funny story about Brooklyn Tech. I was in junior high school, 141 in Astoria, and the assistant principal comes in to my math class. Mrs. Roth was my teacher, and it was algebra. And the assistant principal says, "Will Louis Garcia stand up?" And I'm saying to myself, what did I do now? I mean, here I am standing up in the middle of this class. And then he said, "Will Stephen Ting and John Yamaguchi stand up?" At that point, I knew they never did anything wrong. And that was something good, not bad. And he was just announcing that we were accepted to Brooklyn Tech.
There you go.
Yeah, so that was great. And I went to Brooklyn Tech, graduated, went to Farmingdale. And I came from a basically working middle-class neighborhood, and where a lot of the kids went to civil service. The parents were in civil service. The parents were cops and firefighters. So just from my parents weren't attuned to a civil service background. My father worked as an electrician, local 3, and my mother worked in a factory. And my grandmother stayed home and was the homemaker. So in talking to people, I said, why not take both tests? I thought they might be exciting. Either career might be exciting. I like the appeal of helping people. I liked, the fact that you go into fires might be an interesting thing. Being a police officer, I could help people. Both ways, in both careers, you were part of the city and part of a team, and that appealed to me. Now, the firefighters were extremely happy with their jobs. Very happy. The cops, sometimes they had some problems with their job, and it was a little intense. It was a different type of job. But either way, I took both tests. I happened to score high on both tests. I just looked at my test scores today. I scored 97 on a police exam, so it made me, I was list number 161. The fire exam, I scored a 98, and I was 302 on the list. The police department actually called me first, and they couldn't hire me because they had not finished my investigation. There was a hitch in my investigation. So yeah, I came back. I waited for a while. Then the fire department called me. So now I take the fire department. I'm in Proby School on Welfare Island before they moved, for Randall's. But on Welfare Island, and I get a call from my investigator, my police investigator. And it was in the school, and they called me to the phone, and he's on the phone, and he says to me, would you like to be in the next police class? He says, I don't know. I'm in firefighting school with the fire department. He goes, you're better off stay there. That's exactly what he told me. And I said, fine, I'm staying. So that's how I ended up in the fire department.
We're talking with Lou Garcia. This is volume 26 of the best, the bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. More with Lou in just a second, of course. But first, let me shout out to our friends watching tonight in the chat. If you got a question for the Marshal, fire away. Stu Kelsall, he's always here on the other side of the pond right now. And my condolences to you, Stu. It's a tough night, tough week, really, for England. They just lost Queen Elizabeth at the age of 96, just after midnight in England right now. Billy Ryan, retired detective from the Arson Explosion Squad of the NYPD. He's excited about tonight's show. Good to see you. As always, Billy, co-creator with me of Tales from the Boom Room, profiles the NYPD's Arson Explosion and Bomb Squad. Joe Maliga, retired correctional officer. Steve-O, retired NYPD lieutenant. And Betty Gockel, or Gokul, however you say that. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Betty. My apologies if I'm not. She says, hi, Lou. So it's probably good that you didn't get out to the police department, because think about that time, early 70s, that's the Knapp Commission era. Guys were getting laid off. I mean, I know layoffs affected the FD too, but the PDs, all three of them, housing, transit, and NYPD, got devastated by the layoffs during that time. So it's probably a blessing that you didn't.
Well, no, I got laid off.
Oh, in the fire. Well, yeah, in the fire department. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
so it hit you too. But at least with the PD, you didn't get laid off earlier.
Well, in the beginning of my career, we were a couple of firsts in my career. Yeah. First of all, we went on strike. If you remember,
there was a strike in the 70s. Yeah.
In the 70s, I think it was 74. We went on strike.
Yeah.
And it was a 6-hour strike. It was tough.
Yes, I do know this. Yes.
It was tough to go on strike. It really, really was. And we were outside the firehouse. In fact, we took tools, and because I was in a truck at the time, we took tools, put them in our cars in case we had a fire nearby. We would go in our cars and try to do what we could to help out people at the fire. Mm-hmm. And also in 1975, we got laid off.
Yeah.
So those are two firsts in a career that when you take this type of job, you don't expect to be laid off. And really, I didn't expect ever to strike either. Striking is very tough to do.
Why did you guys strike though? Hang on.
Huh?
Why'd you guys strike in the first place? Or what happened? I forgot the story. I know they struck, but the
president was Vizzini. Mm-hmm. He didn't have the vote to strike. That's why he had to rescind the strike. He didn't have the votes, and O'Hagan found out about it, and I think he was going to be indicted. Actually, Vizzini, for this, he got in trouble. He did not have the votes to strike. I didn't think firefighters. They didn't want to strike. And we struck over money. It was over money about the contract. That's all it was. It was about money and contract.
And at least it was, 6 hours. It's kind of hard in general for essential services to do that, because it looks bad if you go on strike, especially in a city like New York during that time. This was the war years, like the peak of the war years. You get a fire happen and the whole building burns down. Worse yet, people get injured, people get killed. And whatever public sentiment might be on your side is going to turn the worm's going to turn in a hurry.
Well, look, it's terrible for us.
Yeah.
Because we know what we do.
Right.
And it's terrible. Luckily, for those 6 hours, I think the fire activity was almost zero.
Oh, good. All right.
I think the people in the city of New York recognized what was happening, and they were being careful about what they did. Okay? I can tell you right now, nobody felt like striking. It was horrible. It really, we just, we're there to help people. We're not there to watch buildings burn,
Right.
and people would be injured. We're not there for that. That's not what we're made of. What we're made of in the fire department. The best job in the world.
Yeah, best fire department in the world. Now, I'll get to 76 when you came back, and I guess what you did for that year that you were laid off. But it's worth noting you started out in 211 engine, and then you went to ladder 119. But 211 engine, did you get a lot of fire duty in that company? Where was it for those that don't know?
It's on Hooper Street in Williamsburg.
Okay.
All right. Not as much fire duty as, let's say, 209 and 102.
Right.
But we did get fire duty. I remember my first fire. Eddie Sarah was my lieutenant. I'm on the knobs. First time I'm on the knob. And I'm advancing on fire. It was hot. Believe me, it's hot. In front of that knob, it's hot. You know? But it was a great experience. And you have a backup and you know, the brownstone. Most of our fires there, row frame, brownstones, some H types, and some projects.
Right.
You know, and we didn't really use masks then. We didn't take the time to take the mask out of the case and put it on. But the need for on a brownstone or a row frame, everybody knew the apartments. We did so many fires. We're doing about 4,500 runs a year in 211. So you knew the layouts and you knew how to get to a window. And you knew, I mean, if you're on the line, you're on the line. But I mean, if you're in a truck, you knew the layout of the apartments with the smoke. You knew how to take a window. You knew where to go to get some fresh air. So it was, and everybody did this like this. It was like rote. You had enough fire duty where everything was rote, and you depended on your first due engine to get water on the fire. If you were above the fire, you knew the engine companies were going to be there to do what they had to do, and you as the truck company did. And you learn how to cut roofs. You learn how to cut roofs with row frames. It was a great time. It was my first year was wonderful. Wonderful.
Was 119 across the floor?
Yes, 119 was across the floor. They're tower ladder. So, you know, we got to pour water on a fire from the tower ladder. You know, the truck was very appealing to me. When I was in school, I wanted to go to a truck, but I ended up going to 211 because a friend of mine put me in for 211. I forgot about it. And I ended up in a company, in that company. But they were a great company. I mean, the fire department in general, look, being a firefighter is instant gratification. Think about it. You're waiting for a fire to come in. The job comes in. You get ready. You get on the truck. You go there. You got a job. You go there. You put the fire out. You help people. Maybe you help rescue people. But you're there to help. And you know what? The fire goes out.
Yeah.
All right. So you have accomplished. It's not like a corporate job where you're a part of a cog and you don't know. Sometimes you don't even know the end, what you're accomplishing at the end, because you're just a piece of that puzzle. Here, you actually go to a fire, and it's like, and you can come back and you feel good about yourself. You work really hard under adverse conditions. You're taking a beating, and you take your beating. You come back, you talk about what we did. You're all dirty and everything, and to me, that's instant gratification. You actually go out, see a problem, solve it, and help people on the way in a situation where you do it as a team. Yeah. So it's really a satisfying job,
I would say. And you know what? And this is not a knock on the police department. I love the police department too, as those of you who tune into the show regularly know. Love both departments equally. The difference is when you call a cop, they're not always happy to see the police. But when you call the fire department, they're always happy to see the fire department. Absolutely. Because you're not adversaries in this position. There's no such thing as an adversary when a building's on fire. The only adversary is the fire.
The police department is certainly a different job. I in the end of during my career, I probably worked, when I was in the Marshal's office, I worked with more cops I did within the fire department. You know, all our information, we work together with the police department.
Right.
I respect them totally for what they do. And you know what? It's a tough job. Being a cop is a tough job, and sometimes it's thankless. Mm-hmm. There's difficult situations, especially if you're on patrol, making snap judgments, making judgment calls. It's a hard job. Yeah. It's a very hard job.
Yeah. No, and I don't envy the people that are doing it now. And and I respect those who have done it in the past for sure. So that year, 75 to 76, I know a lot of the guys in the PD and the FD side that got laid off during that time. They went to work in construction. Some of them drove buses for the MTA. I remember a while Mickey Cross, when he was on this show, telling me he drove a bus for a few years before the fire department called him back. What'd you do in that year before you got back on the job?
Well, listen, I did everything. I mean, I had a family. I had a family. I had a house in Mineola. I had a wife, one child, and you make money. So I did everything. I was a security guard. I drove a bus. I did insurance. I went to a school for insurance adjusting for Crowman Forster Insurance in their program. So I did a lot. And actually, driving the bus was, you made the best money driving a bus. I drove a bus in Manhattan, the 101s and the 102s, up and down Manhattan and 96th Street Crosstown. It was quite the experience. Quite the experience. It wasn't going to be my permanent job, my career. I knew that eventually I'd go back to the fire department. But it gave you a different take on life and a different take. And you watch people coming on the bus. I used to have people on the bus, if they didn't have enough money, that was fine. You know, I wasn't worried about being fired. You know, I didn't like people sneaking on the bus. I remember being on we had 101. 101 went across 125th Street.
Mm.
And a guy snuck in the back of the bus. He could have come in the front and asked me, can I get on the bus? I mean, that's the type of guy.
Worst you could say is no.
Yeah. I mean, but he snuck in the back door. You can tell. You can see. So I pulled the bus out to the middle. Now, I can do this because I know this is not my career, okay?
Mm.
I pulled them out to the middle of 125th Street. There's no air conditioning on the bus. And I just shut the bus down. And I said, I'm not moving this bus until the guy who snuck in the back door leaves. Well, everybody looked at the guy on that bus, looked at the fellow who snuck in. And he got up and he left the bus. And I said, thank you. And we kept going.
Oh my God. So that brings us, I guess, to 1976 on that note. And you get back in the ladder, you get back in the FDNY and you go to ladder 102.
Well, actually, I first went to ladder 104 under one of the government programs. Okay. I was in 104. That was a tiller rig in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. Williamsburg on South 2nd Street. I was there for a few months. And then I went to 102.
Okay.
And I found a home in 102. I really found a home in 102. I mean, 119 and 211 were great. It was a great firehouse. 104, they're all good. They're all similar. The makeup might be different depending on the captain. But 102 was doing a lot of work. We're doing 6,000 runs a year. I had my best training and my best fire officer that I ever worked with was a fellow by the name of Dennis Cross.
He got killed in 9/11, right?
He got killed, yes. God rest his soul. He was killed in 9/11. Dennis Cross was my officer. We also had, it was an all-star cast there. You had Harry Rogers as the captain. You had Balloon Spillane as one of the lieutenants, and Brian O'Flaherty, who eventually became the captain of Rescue 1. He was a lieutenant there. Mm. And Pete Gansey also came through there as lieutenant, and he covered for Dennis Cross's vacations.
Wow! Imagine having him as your LT.
Yeah, so you had. He came out of 111. Pete came out of 111. I knew him as a firefighter in 111. At that time, you had the most experienced firefighters in the world in Brooklyn, in that area. The trucks it was 102, 108, 111. 132 was further down. 103 across Brooklyn, the other side with 120. All these companies and all the engine companies were very experienced, and we depend on each other. And we knew we were safe. We knew water was going to get on that fire. We knew that your trucks were going to make a good search. We knew this. Rescue 2 came in once in a while, Not that I like Rescue 2, but I'd rather be in Rescue 1. But the Rescue.
That was Freddie Gallagher's Rescue 2 too back then. So they were ultra aggressive.
You gotta be at an elevator with Dennis Cross and Freddie Gallagher getting to the elevator at the same time. That is, I remember one time Me and Dennis, it was like a fourth or fifth. It was a ridiculous fire. It was and it was roll frames, and I mean, we were on the top floor of this building. I mean, the roofs were taken off already. I mean, it was not. We weren't doing much there. Okay, and actually, the chief was asking everybody to evacuate. So I'm on the top floor, which is the third floor of this building. They have a ladder up to a window, and Freddie Gallagher and Dennis Cross are both there. Jack Pritchard and me.
Jack, oh my God!
So Jack,
add Jack to the element. My God,
we're the firefighters, and the chief's ordering us off the floor, and nobody's moving to the ladder. You know, nobody's moving. I'm waiting for my officer to move. No one's moving to that ladder. I was on a pile of rubble. I ended up falling into a window and cutting my wrist. You know, so the blood's just coming out. So that gave everybody an excuse to leave the floor. So I just wrapped up the wrist. The blood's coming out, and Jack and I are going down the ladder together, and we left the floor.
Oh my God! And Pritchard, he's another one. I mean, and I say this endearingly. This is not a knock on him. He's a nut job, but a good nut job. Because boy, oh boy, that guy. Exactly. I've never seen somebody that refused, no matter what. The man's leg could be falling off. He would not want to go to the hospital.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're surrounded by good firefighters. There were good firefighters in every one of these companies.
Yeah.
They were great firefighters, and it was good. 102 was a lot of experience. Jack Boyle and I became my closest friend as a firefighter was Jack Boyle. He went to Rescue 1 with me from 102. And I remember we went to the projects. It was actually, I think 110 should have been at this job, but we got there I don't know where they were, where everybody was, but we got there first. And we had these kids hanging out this like 20-story window, smoke coming out from them. So I have a roof rope. And I told the story at Jack's funeral. I had the roof rope. So I'm going up to and Jack got the OV. Yeah, I was the roof man. He was the OV, whatever. We both end up on the floor above the fire. And so these are casement windows, and which means there's a bar in the middle and a bar on the bottom of the window. So the space, and they opened up you would open them up by pulling them out, So that means the space is very small. So I got the roof rope, so I want to go down the rope. All right. Jack's going, Louis, you can't fit through the window. That's what he's telling me. Now, Jack was a little guy, a little skinny guy. I go, no, I can fit through the window. So I get up I'm having a hard time. The kids are down there. I'm having a hard time. So I just lowered the rope, and he went out the window. And he made the rescue because he could get through the window. But he knew it right away. He said, Louis, you're not going to get through that window.
And you got those poor kids down there like.
Yeah. Man, he did. He got down there. Dennis Cross and the team got through the door. I passed down cylinder for him. He gave the kids air and calmed them down, and the door was forced and the fire was put out. And it was successful. He ended up getting a class 3 out of it. He deserved.
Should have.
He deserved.
Good job. It was a good job. Hey, it's funny because you mentioned so many of these guys. Obviously, Gallagher, captain of Rescue 2. Think about the guys that ended up going on into leadership roles. You mentioned some of them already. Dennis Cross was a battalion chief by the time 9/11 came around. Jack Pritchard ended up becoming a battalion chief down the road.
True.
So these guys, not only did they get the work done as firemen first, when they progressed through the ranks, they especially got the work done from a leadership level. And who wouldn't want those guys as leaders?
Well, they had a lot to teach. Remember those days in the 70s. When I was in it, we had a lot of experience, and they passed on the knowledge. When you went to a company like 102 or 119, or one of the engine companies, the guys in those companies were able to teach you because they had experienced a lot of fires. I mean, it was great, to be a firefighter at that time, And then I went to Rescue 1.
Who was captain of 1 when you went there?
A man called Tom Baldwin.
Okay.
Brian O'Flaherty came later.
Right.
Yeah, Tom Baldwin was the captain. Chief Duffy, I told Chief Duffy was in the 3-4 battalion, which was in the quarters of 102, 209. And I told him I was thinking of going to a rescue, and he says, "Go to Rescue 1. Learn something new. If you go to Rescue 2, you're doing the same fires you've been doing. Go to Rescue 1." And I interviewed. In those days, you interview with the captain, and you went down and recommend. Now, Chief Duffy had been a firefighter in Rescue 1 with Tom Baldwin. In those days, the Rescue 1 very insular. Everybody, all the officers in Rescue 1 were from Rescue 1. It's firefighters. Okay, so, and it was a story. It was the first rescue. You know, I think 1915 it was formed.
Yep.
And you had Manhattan. But I'll tell you what. I went to Rescue 1. I learned about Manhattan fires. And let me tell you, they're scary. They're big buildings. You have to learn to use a mask. You do. You really have to learn how to use a mask there. Because you're going into buildings and you don't know the layout. I mean, I've been in apartments on the Upper West Side or the East Side where there are half a floor, 14 rooms. It's not a brownstone. It's not, it's not, you have these huge space and office buildings. You're not going to go up in an office building without a mask. I'm going to tell you right now. And you can't take windows.
Right.
You're not taking a window in an office building. You're not going to have a window come down from 20 stories and kill somebody on the street. It's a totally different. You have to slow down. It's a Chief's fire. I call them Chief's fires. You have to slow down. You have to use your brains. And the rescue knew how to do that. Rescue 1, I was privileged to be in Rescue 1. And there was no formal, in those days, the training was within the rescue itself. You didn't have rescue services. You didn't have the outside training for heavy rescues that they have nowadays. It was what you learn by being there and from the other firefighters.
Was Joe Angelini there at the time?
So Joe Angelini went there the same time I did.
Okay.
Joe and Angelini and I went together. We were there at the same time. Went together.
Wow.
And I knew Joe very, very well. And Jack Boyle followed about a month later. So he came to Rescue 1. And we worked for Jimmy Curran.
Yeah.
So Joe, myself, Jack Boyle, Spanky McAllister. we all worked in Jimmy Curran's group. We call ourselves Rubber Gun Squad. We were a little flamboyant. Jimmy was a little flamboyant himself,
Right. I've heard.
Yeah, so we all worked in the same. I'll tell you, one of the first fires I went and rescued was a tough fire. We're going uptown. And Tom Baldwin, I was working with Tom Baldwin that day, and we're going to a fire uptown. We never make it uptown. We're going to Inwood, and you never get to go to. First of all, Rescue 3's area,
right?
But Rescue 3 was out, so we're on the West Side Highway. We're figuring we're going to get turned around before we get there, but we keep on going. It took us in traffic. I think it's a half an hour to get up there. And this fire, you're not hearing anything about the fire over the radio. We don't know what's happening. But it ended up being like I think a third or fourth alarm in an H-type building. And that was the first time I was at a fire participating, and the only time where a firefighter died or was injured so severely. A guy named John McKenna, and that fire was in 1979 or 78. Let me see. 79. He was in ladder 34. When we get to the job, there's a Mayday. Firefighter went through the roof into the 79.
Fire. Yeah.
It was a fellow, a young guy named John McKenna, big guy. He went through the roof, through the roof. We split up. The rescue split up to try to make it to him. We knew where he fell through. So my team went to breach a wall, try to get into the apartment. Well, he self-evacuated. One of the rescue guys, Norman Newkirk, was going up the rear of the building, rear fire escape, to try to get to the room where he came through. And he fell, actually, the roof collapsed. He fell right into the middle of the kitchen where the fire was. And he self-evacuated out the window. He just burst through the window, and Norman Newkirk saw it. He fell down the fire escape, down the stairs, and entered the room below the apartment below the fire. We all knew where he was now. We all got there, and here he was, and we're trying to treat him, and he was very severely burned. Severely burned. It was heartbreaking. It really was. But we're there to give aid and put water on him and everything. I mean, his coat had flaked off, his pants were gone. We got a Stokes up there from the rig, from the rescue rig. Got a Stokes up there, put him in the Stokes. We talked to him, calmed him down. Eventually, he kind of went. He was silent. I think he was going into shock. We wrapped him up, and we had to take him down the stairs. And I'll never forget it because the senior man in the rescue was a guy named Bill Riley, and everybody called him Mr. Riley.
Paul Hassagan told me about him. Yep.
We all called him Mr. Riley.
Yeah.
And I was the youngest guy in Rescue 1. And it was him and I that carried, because the stairs were narrow, it was him and I that carried him down. And he was a big guy, he was heavy. So we carried him down from the 5th floor down the staircase, going around the turns.
Right.
And I was at the bottom and Bill was on the top of Stokes. We were exhausted. By the time we got to the first floor, Rescue 3 had gotten there, and they said, "We'll take him." And I said, "Sure," And they took him out the front to the rescue's rig. Now there's a picture. I think it's a pretty famous picture of them carrying the Stokes, and they put him on on Rescue 3's rig and took him to the burn center.
Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, he ended up dying on March, about a month, 3 weeks later, March 19th.
March 17th. It says 1979. The fire itself was on February 22nd of that year.
Yeah, so he died a few weeks later.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's just it was my first experience with that, and I got in Rescue 1. But we did a lot of worthwhile work in Rescue 1. It was we were called to do a lot of specialized stuff, and I remember the 9th Battalion. The chiefs knew us by name. We actually, when we went to fires, they knew who was working in the rescue, and they would ask us what was going on this floor, what was going on that floor. Former chief of department was trying to think of his name now. A great chief of department. He ended up being chief of department. He was the 9th Battalion. He was in the 9th Battalion. O'Rourke. John O'Rourke.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He was in the 9th Battalion then. And you learned a lot. I learned about sub-basement fires. You learned about ship fires. It was interesting work, and sometimes it was scary. If you weren't scared, you're an idiot. Right. This is not running in a building on a brownstone. It's not the same thing. Right.
Whole different ballgame. And that's not even talking about the non-fire emergencies you guys had, like elevator jobs, car accidents, collapse situations. You guys did a lot back then. And a lot of it's funny to see how much, before I get to your Marshal's years, just how much they have now, because I think they didn't start. I don't know about one. I know at least two didn't start to become technical rescue gurus they are today until Downey took over. Gallagher brought them up to speed on a lot of different things, and it was great. It's when Downey took over that they really became the hybrids of sorts, if you will. They could handle just about any emergency besides fire. Well, but still being there was great.
Ray Downey, he really started rescue services.
Yeah.
Ray Downey was an excellent fire officer. I knew him. He knew what he was doing, and he knew about training. And he's the one that really kind of unified into, like, you always had SOD in the police department.
Yeah, emergency service. Yep.
Which had harbor, and they had the trucks, the ESU trucks and everything.
Yep.
Ray Downey, started the rescue services, and the guy very knowledgeable, very astute.
You're talking about FEMA?
Huh?
You're talking about FEMA?
No, it's Ray Downey.
I'm saying what Ray Downey did with FEMA, with combining ESU cops and firemen.
Well, that's something else.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying within the fire department itself, starting the rescue services, just starting that, the concept and the training.
Right.
And all of a sudden there was more formalized training, and to his credit, I mean, rescue services, wherever they are today, is because of him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Special Operations Command turns 25 years old next summer. And I was saying this to a friend of mine the other day. If he could see what SOC is now, he'd be so proud of what it is from what
Oh,
he
yeah.
started, from what his vision was when he started it officially in 1998 to what it is now. God, it's very, very. To say it's up to speed would be an understatement. Put it that way. They do a lot of good and have done a lot of good in the almost quarter century they've been around. So we've been talking for about a half hour now. We haven't even gotten to your Marshals years yet, which tells you how interesting your career was. A lot of stuff that you did. So it's 1981, if I'm not mistaken, that you have your first stint in the Marshals.
Yes.
What made you want to go there? What was it about it that attracted you?
Well, I took look. I was always good at taking tests.
That much is obvious.
Some people have a knack for it. Some people get nervous. I never got nervous. Anyway, I passed the fire marshal's test. I never studied for it. I just passed it. So now I'm saying to myself, it'd be interesting to see. Imagine this. A fire is really an incident. So what firefighters respond to are incidents.
Mm-hmm.
Without an investigation, that's all that is. It's an incident. I mean, it's a serious incident, and you're doing your job to extinguish the fire and rescue and search and rescue. But it's an incident. As a fire marshal, now you get to classify the incident. And I felt like, let me try that. It's kind of cerebral. It's a different aspect. I didn't go to the police department. Here, fire marshals are actually police officers.
Mm-hmm.
Not peace officers. They're actually police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes you a police officer in New York State very interesting is the criminal procedure law. They list everybody who is a police officer, and they list everybody who is a peace officer.
Right.
And for instance, Nassau County fire marshals, they carry guns, but they're peace officers. New York City fire marshals are the only fire marshals in the state of New York that have police, designated police officers.
Which is so cool.
It's cool. Plus, we also can issue administrative subpoenas for information to corporations and others and such. And we can also take oaths and affirmations from witnesses. These were given to us by the city, in city law, only because you remember arson. If there's an arson fire, it's a crime. Most of the time, it's a crime against property. All right. So burglaries are tough to investigate. Criminal mischief, burning garbage, it doesn't receive the attention. Now, sometimes you have arson where a homicide has already taken place. All right. So it's to cover up a homicide. So someone gets strangled. I mean, that happens more often than not. But I mean, people get shot, strangled, but they're stabbed, and someone tries to cover up the crime by starting a fire. But you have homicides where a fire marshal goes to a building. It's very serious work. Fire marshal goes to a building in terms, let's say in terms of the fire being incendiary, for someone died. And I'm talking about somebody remote from the fire. I'm talking about someone jumps out a window for some reason. Well, that person died in the commission of a felony. That makes them a homicide. But it's not a regular homicide investigation. Because when you do a homicide investigation, you're looking at the person who was killed and why he was killed. And maybe these people are familiar with him or he had problems with people. Here, you're talking about a crime against property where somebody died. There was not they were not the target of the crime. The building was the target of the crime. That's difficult. Try to comprehend that now. Let's put it this way. Let's say I have a woman. These are really some of the fires. I have a woman who's mad at her husband. Okay, so his clothes are in the washing machine in the apartment. She decides she's going to put them on fire. Why? Because she's so mad at him. Well, that washing machine's in a building, a frame building. That fire can spread. Now you have maybe 2 floors going, but the original intent was to light up the guy's clothes or to burn the bed that they shared. Now this fire has spread.
And people have gotten hurt. People have gotten killed even.
People can get killed.
Mm-hmm.
The building is being damaged. Mm-hmm. They're not thinking about that when they do these fires.
Oh, crimes of passion, right?
That's a crime of passion.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about who else lives in that building.
Right.
So we're investigating a crime, for the most part, a crime against property that may result, as a side note, into a homicide. All right. So, myself and Jerry Sheehan, in the end, when I was the chief fire marshal and Jerry was the head of the bomb squad, we wrote the MOU.
He told me, yeah.
Yeah, together we wrote the MOU to define our roles within the city, especially regarding homicides. And it was something that was necessary. Depending on the leadership, the leadership in the fire marshal at one time. First of all, we had to get integrated into the fire department. Firefighters didn't understand what we did in the beginning. I'm talking about right in the beginning. They really didn't understand what we were doing. And we had a bad reputation because at one time we were shoe flies in the fire department. Okay? So, but all of a sudden the Red Cap program started and they started hiring a lot of fire marshals. It was an opportunity to learn something new as far as I was concerned. And you could always go back to firefighter if you didn't like it. And, you trained at the fire marshal school was maybe 6 weeks. And we had people who were knowledgeable in cause and origin of fires. And you looked at the patrol guide and you looked at the, police procedures. Today, fire marshal school, a program was developed within the bureau that is accredited. They got college accreditation. And I don't know how many, it's 12, 15 weeks. The school is much longer. And first, it was started by Mike Becci, and we continued it. And the program is much different now. It's much better training. And you have certifications you go through. You have state certifications. The fire marshal today is a much better educated marshal in cause and origin and in investigative procedures. I mean, because of our cooperation with the police department. At first, we didn't. We were suspicious of each other. But the bottom line is, if you get past the bosses and their suspicion of each other, the investigators, all they're trying to do is get information to solve a case.
Right.
And they can work together.
Yeah.
Once they start trusting each other, they can work together. And we had a program. Jerry Shee and I worked together in a joint operation out of the 4-3 precinct in the Bronx. It was fire marshals and detectives that worked together. We did the cause and origin, and we helped investigate the job. Look, we're both trying to accomplish the same thing. It's just the differences in the culture of the job. The people were kind of suspicious for a while, but once you start working together, and once you can freely, it's just like the FBI trying to give information to the local cop. I mean, really, in the end, it's all about who wants to give up the information. But if you can work together as a team, you're much better for it. And I think we started achieving that, and we started. I mean, the MOU helped quite a bit.
I think it's still helping now.
Of course it is. I mean, and there's a look. If they just we have basically we work together. They have full responsibility of homicides. We have full responsibility of cause and origin. If they have evidence that our cause and origin might be off, I mean, there's a procedure where we talk about it. Right now right now I believe Danny Flynn, the new chief, they have a joint task force with ATF. I mean, people are exchanging information. They're doing their jobs together, and because investigators are investigators, they're just trying to do the right thing.
Right. And
even the police department, there was in the MOU, there's a section where it says if a firefighter dies as a result of an incendiary fire, there will be consideration in taking the arrest.
Yeah, remember Jerry telling me that.
I remember Tiffany in the Bronx. I had a fire, fourth alarm homicide. The boyfriend, her mother's boyfriend, came back with something. He got thrown out of the social club she owned because she was abusing her. The girlfriend's the boyfriend beat him up, threw him out. He came back with gasoline, poured it into the club. All right. She went back in. I mean, this became a fourth alarm. It took the whole taxpayer on Tiffany and Westchester, and she went back in to get the register, and she died. She actually was out of the building, went back in, and this happens. People do this, and they shouldn't go back in, but it's happened more than one occasion. And she died as a result of the fire. And it was a homicide. She was a very well beloved person. The neighborhood gave the guy up. They felt he was going to go back to he was Dominican, go back to the Dominican Republic, and they gave us the outcome. So myself, and my partner went, grabbed him out of bed, handcuffed him, and brought him back to the scene. Once we were there, now we have an arson DA and we have the homicide DA. Okay, so we're pawns here. Now we have the local squad, detective squad, and it was decided in the Bronx DA's office that they would take the arrest. Now I was not happy with that, but I had to abide by the decision.
Right.
You know, but then we worked together, and I did the trial for them because I had more information than the cop. But they made the arrest. It was in the newspapers. Police make the arrest. You know, but you know what? In the end, it turned out fine. The guy went to trial, got convicted. He's a bad guy too. So, as a result of all this that went on between the two, when investigating cause and origin, we've experienced fires as firefighters. We know the behavior of fire, so we're better equipped to talk to the firefighters also, because we speak their language. You know, and they're less suspicious of us than they are of cops. It's just that, you know, so we're the liaison for the fire department with the police department.
And a good one at that. And yes. Man, this stuff, man, that you're telling me about, these cases, I mean, they remind me of all the Telemundo novelas that my abuela used to watch. Like, this kind of stuff would happen in the novelas, and you think to yourself, come on now, it's ridiculous. It's TV being dramatic. No, it happens to real life. As you said, it's art imitating life. And, you know, it's lovers' quarrels. Well, look at Happy Land, which we'll talk about a little later. Lovers' quarrel.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and in the end, the MOU helped. I think we have a very good relationship with the police department now. Mm-hmm. It wasn't quite that at one time, and you know, I think Jerry and I think we're happy with the way things develop.
Oh, you should be. You absolutely should be.
You know, he's a very close friend of mine, Jerry. We were together on 9/11. We'll get that. We were together when the second building collapsed on 9/11.
I'll get to that shortly. You know, I have a couple of questions in the chat, and I'll get to it in a second. I have to, and I know it sounds like a generic cop question, but I do have to ask, because the fire marshal's role in New York City, as you said, is unique. And as you heard Marshal Garcia mention, you know, they are police officers. They have police officer status in New York City. Not that I would do this, but if, for example, if I took a woman's purse, if I did that in the presence of a New York City fire marshal, he or she has just as much right to arrest me as a New York City police officer would. So it's a very unique job. That said, you know, and this is where the generic question comes in. Did you ever have to pull your piece on anybody?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that story, or is it classified?
Well,
you can say pass.
It was. I mean, all right. It was a couple of times. Mm-hmm. A couple of times. The one time where I was actually off duty. A firefighter was killed outside of a brawl from a bar called Suspenders in Manhattan. I was working in that bar at the time. Mm-hmm. I was divorced. I had a lot of jobs. And a fellow by the name of John Montgomery, was stabbed, and so was Larry Flint. This fight started in the bar. I'm not going to name all the people because there are a lot of firefighters in that bar.
That's fine. You don't have
to. It spilled out into the street, and things happened up the block. And in the end, I was trying to break it up the block, and this fella was a truck driver from, I believe, Georgia or North Carolina or something. Pulled a knife. Was it just a pocket jackknife? And I thought, I was right there when it happened. I thought he had punched both John and Larry. Now, John was a very big man, a big guy. John and Larry, I thought he punched them in the chest. And then they walked away. Him and the brothers, they walked away. And John said, "I'm not feeling well," pulled up his chest, and the blood was coming out of squirting out of his chest. Larry says, "I don't feel good." He pulled up his shirt, and I was right between them both when this happened. The guy didn't do it. It didn't touch me. And Larry, and he was bleeding, but John was really arterial blood. So these guys were walking up the block, and I caught up to them. I took my gun out. I had my gun, and I told them to turn around. And it was on 39th and 2nd, and the guy turned around. He had a knife in his hand. I said, "Drop it right now. I'm going to shoot you." I told him. I warned him. He saw I had the gun. I held it. I said, he dropped the knife. So I went to proceed to arrest them, and we had a little bit of a fight, and they were injured during this fight with me, and I didn't know I got injured, but I was injured, and the police came quickly. They came. They put cuffs on the guys, and that was the time I came closest to using weapons. For the most part, when you're investigating fires, you're calling people in. I mean, I arrested I arrested people in the office or in a DA's office. I mean, it's an investigative. We're not running around like ESU.
Right.
It's not that type of job. It's an investigator's job. So, but as I said, this was off duty, and I ended up in hospital for a week with what they call the human bite infection. Actually, I punched the person and it cut my knuckle, and all of a sudden I was infected. I had this cellulitis and had 105 fever. I was just so I ended up in Bellevue over Christmas. I ended up in Bellevue. It was a tough night. It was a tough night, But for the most part, investigators aren't really rolling around the ground with anybody.
You try not to.
No, well, no. I mean, yeah, right. You try not to. You shouldn't be. You should be. They should be coming into your office. I arrested people in the offices of the parole officers. One guy, Superman, was tough in the Bronx. They called him Superman. We had to drag him out of a car up in the Bronx. It was we're looking for him for months. This guy. This guy. It's kind of a funny story. It's not funny, but and remember something. We have to have a relationship with the police department because we use their facilities.
Right.
You
go through their academy too, or
huh?
Do you go through their academy too?
No, but we do go to their courses. If we start cooperating, we have fire marshals go to CIC school. That's criminal investigation course. Right. Also homicide school. And we reciprocate with training. I mean, this is what's happened. And you know what? It's invaluable training for the marshals to learn their techniques, and it fosters a relationship between the two agencies. So Superman, here's a fella who tried to burn out his wife twice. Once with putting garbage in front of her door, and his daughter's in there, and his daughter's grandmother.
Sounds like a lovely guy.
The second time, the guy he was a bad guy. Anyway, the second time he put gasoline on his door. So we're up there. I'm with the guy who caught the case was a guy named John Manson, but I was his partner, and so we're canvassing the building, and everybody's calling him Superman. Oh, be careful with Superman. He carries a gun. He sells drugs. He's killed people. That's what we're hearing from everybody. So we go back up to the apartment, with his wife is. And I said, is your husband a big guy? You know? And she says, no, he's like, 5'8", 5'9". I said, well, everybody's calling him Superman. Why are they calling him Superman? Is he strong? I mean, what, She says, no, the police came to arrest him once on a warrant. Now, he thought it was a homicide. He thought it was a big one. It was just a gun charge, But the warrant squad came to the door to arrest him, and he jumped out the window. And I said, what window did he jump out of? And she showed me the window. He jumped out of a six-story window into a concrete courtyard and survived and limped away.
Jesus.
So that's why we call him Superman. We end up getting him Christmas Eve, about 6 months later, and that was it. And so now now this is what's invaluable when you're dealing with the police department. So we take him to the 4-6 precinct, and we have the detectives there. This guy happened to be Dominican. He only spoke Spanish. I speak Spanish. So when I'm questioning him, the guy's not cooperating at all. Not even giving me his name. I mean, the guy's being a real idiot. Okay. So the detective there, who says, something, and he can speak Spanish, goes, listen, I'm from Santo Domingo. I'm Dominican. He says to him, if you don't start behaving yourself, we're going to deport you back to Santo Domingo, to the Dominican Republic. The guy says, so what? He says, I'll take a boat, go to Puerto Rico, and come right back. And he says, no, you're not going to come right back. Because Captain So-so, I'm going to make up a name, Captain Diego So-and-so, is my cousin. He's a police officer there. He's the captain. And he's going to meet you at the airport. And we'll see if you ever leave the island. So the guy straightened up in about 5 seconds, started cooperating. Okay. So, and I processed him, put him in a cage, We ended up going to trial, and he got big. He was yelling at me. I was on the witness stand. He was yelling at me, threatening me from the witness stand. But when he was, they're going to gag him at the trial. But I asked the detective. I said, "Well, who is this? Who is this guy?" He says, "Listen, he's not my cousin. I know about the guy. I know his name. You never leave the island if that guy meets you at the airport. Everybody knows. No one's leaving the island if that guy meets you. The whole island knows this." Mm-hmm. So, and it scared him.
Scared. That's the mind games that an investigator so astutely knows how to play.
This is great. I mean, here you have a detective helping out a fire marshal,
right?
In this situation. I mean, it's that's where cooperation.
Mm. And I have to say it because I'm Dominican. I'm half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. Why do they got to be Dominican? I feel like these guys...
I can talk about Puerto Ricans too.
No, yeah, I could say this because of both.
Cubans? I'm Cuban and Puerto Rican.
We are a nutty bunch. I feel like you probably arrested one of my family members at one point.
Well, I mean, Jerry, when he alluded to the
and he's watching.
He alluded to the Cubans with Alonzo Pons.
Uh-huh.
When Jose Battles in Miami said that they were trying to take over the numbers from the Dominicans, right. And they were killing people up here in New York. Mm-hmm. And Alonzo Pons was a Cuban.
Right.
There's criminals. Look, every ethnic group has their criminals.
Sure. No, of course.
Russians, Albanians, everybody. Italians, everybody. I mean, it's not only Italian. I mean, they talk about Italian. Every ethnic group that ever came to this country has a criminal element.
If you go to Washington Heights, I was just gonna say, if you go to Washington Heights, you're either gonna get one of two things. You're gonna get a great plate of rice and beans, or you're gonna get stabbed. No,
well, I'll tell you what.
Or both.
The rice and beans are great up
yes.
in Washington Heights. One of our best undercover cases. We had a fire marshal named Frank Gillis. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the best investigators I ever met. Frank was out of 17 truck, highly decorated Vietnam veteran, low-key guy. You never even know he was in the room. Frank, great dancer, didn't drink, but he's a great dancer. and he used to do undercover work for us. And we have undercover equipment. We have surveillance vans and stuff. We don't advertise it. This was in fact Howard Safer was the commissioner at the time.
Oh, man.
And we had this caper going on where this fellow who had a store that sold material over up on 181st Street. You know how busy that street is?
Oh yeah, very busy.
Right in the middle. That's a busy street.
Mm.
Well, he wanted to burn up his shop, you know, and he approached some people. One of them was an informant who told Frank. He knew Frank knew him, and I said, "All right, we'll play it," you know. So Frank, we wire him up, you know, he's got everything. And Frank was such a great investigator. We're all in the van, and I was the assistant chief fire marshal, or in charge of Manhattan, either one. And I'm in the van listening to the tapes, you know, listening to the conversation. And he's talking to him in Spanish. That not only did the guy, you know, he got the guy to go with him to the store to buy alcohol and a timing device. He asked the guy when you want him to burn down the store, because he was going to give Frank a key. He says, 2 o'clock in the morning. He says, this is on tape for us. And this is also, we're doing a video for the van. He comes outside the store and he says, look at all these people here. This is how smart Frank was. Look at all these people here. What about these people? Aren't you worried about their health, their welfare? He said, fuck them, but in Spanish. Oh, I can't use those words.
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, he said more or less the heck with it.
Right.
With that. Okay. And Frank said, are you sure? The guy dug himself into a grave. He could never extricate himself from that.
Right.
And then they went to the store. He paid for it. He had the bill, the receipt. I mean, this guy, and we ended up arresting him. And when we arrested him, he had a perp walk. He had a shirt on. Money talks, nobody walks. I mean, you know,
can't make it up.
And he basically said he didn't care about any of the people that might die.
Right.
He was just wanted his store burned for the insurance. His store was on the ground floor of this apartment building that was jammed. You know what? You know how many people in those apartment buildings up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Frank was a great guy, and he was a great investigator. You know, but I had a lot of good investigators, and you know, I got Richie McKay, who's assistant chief fire marshal. You know, James Kelty was in charge of that. We had a lot of talented people, and you know, I was lucky. If you're a boss, you surround yourself with talented people, you're going to be successful.
Of course.
That's what.
And if you know how to get the best out of them, that's another key. Because you could have talented people there, but if you don't know how to get the very best out of them, then it's a moot point. But no, I mean, obviously you got the best out of him as a fire marshal, and Jerry's in the chat between the arson and explosion squad and the bomb squad. He got the best out of his guys too. Just to backtrack a couple of years. So I never got, I mean, I've heard the perspective of obviously first responders getting there that night. And I've heard the perspective of the investigation into it from Jerry's standpoint and Billy Ryan's standpoint. But with Happy Land and the Trade Center bombing, I mean, I don't know. I know you were in the 6th Division as a lieutenant for a year. Were you still in the 6th Division when Happy Land went down?
Yeah,
did you come back?
When Happy Land went down, I was coming into work. I was a lieutenant, and I was, I think it was either 19 truck or 50 engine I was covering.
Okay.
When I pulled, I came in around 4 o'clock in the morning, so I was at another job, my other job. So, and the chief there said, Louis, there's a fire, a terrible fire up the up the street there. He told me where it was. It was Happy Land. He says, you might want to help out with the investigation, because I spoke Spanish.
Right.
So I went up there, to help out with the investigation, because I spoke Spanish, and I saw the most horrific sight I've ever seen in my life. I can't imagine what it would have been like to respond there and fall into that club and just touch bodies. You could not you could not walk into that second floor. The second floor was mostly all smoke. First floor had some burns, but all you were touching bodies. That must have been it must have been overwhelming for the first responders. I felt bad for them. They must have been. It was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there later and I saw the results. And I helped out the investigation as much as I could, but I was a lieutenant then. I had to work the next day, so next day I was, I went back, as a lieutenant, but I saw Happy Lands, and I mean, the investigation, everybody gave up the guy, so the fellow who did it, so they were able to make an arrest fairly quickly on a fire.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you had so much sampling. I mean, you had samples, you had flammable liquids. I mean, you had patterns. It was actually the easy cause and origin investigation,
Right. With the Trade Center bombing, you were back in the Marshals for that. How much of a hand did you have in that?
Well, the first bombing of the World Trade Center, I was actually going on a cruise out of Miami to the Bahamas, and I was with she wasn't my wife then, but my future wife. And I said, well, if I was working, I'd be there right now, but I'm not working, so I'm not there right now. So that was the extent of my experience there.
Quick note though, and you mentioned Safer. I'm gonna get to something else that was interesting during the 90s as well. But with Safer, one of the things I credited him for was, again, talking about getting the most out of the people that work under you. When he came in as commissioner, and he wanted, as he said, he was very open. He wanted to be the police commissioner. He didn't get that until a couple of years later when Bratton left, but he was the fire commissioner for a couple of years, and he came to love it very quickly. He helped kind of revitalize the Marshals operation because he put, again, talk about working with great people and putting them in the right spots to succeed. He put Chief Garcia in charge of the Marshals. So Chief had it from 94 to 97 and got it, like I said, he untangled so many webs with it. What was it like having Chief Garcia as the overseer for those 3 years?
Well, I knew Pete. So, and Pete, what was good about Pete, when he didn't know, he asked. Yes, he didn't assume he knew everything. And he didn't. I mean, you're talking about police agency, and it's a different culture. I mean, when you have a police agency, you have people with guns, you have a lot of rules you have to abide by. It's not as free and easy as operations in the fire department. The culture is way different. But he was able to ask, and at that time he had Mike Becci, who he made chief fire marshal. He had me. I became assistant chief fire marshal under Safer, but before I was assistant chief fire marshal, I was the executive officer of Manhattan, and then I became the acting commanding officer of Manhattan because the deputy chief who was in charge of Manhattan had a motorcycle accident actually, and he was laid up. He never came back to work after that. But so I had Manhattan. And that's when we started the Fireworks Task Force. I got to know Safer very well. Safer opened Manhattan. Manhattan had been closed. The fire marshals in the police in fire department were sometimes we resented it. We used to open locations and close them or move them for other people. We weren't, it had to do with politics downtown and who was the chief fire marshal. I'm not going to get into that, but
right.
We didn't quite earn the respect from the administration maybe we should have had. We got that later on though.
I would say.
So anyway, so Pete was there for a bit, learned a lot, went back, he went down and he became chief of operations and eventually chief of department.
Yeah.
Mike Becci took over. I became the assistant chief fire marshal. So I had operations. So I ran the operations. He was in headquarters. I ran operations out of Hooper Street for the Marshals at that point. But before that, I was in Manhattan. And Safer and I got to know each other. He also he opened up Manhattan. He opened up Queens. We had 4 locations at that time, plus a location, SIU location in Manhattan. He understood police work because he was a U.S. Marshal at one time.
And DEA.
He understood police work. Mm-hmm. So he understood about investigations. He did. So he was great to have around we had a fire commissioner who understood investigations. And in the end, after Pete Gantz left, we ended up first reporting. We didn't report to the chief of department And to this day, there are two uniform chiefs that report directly to the commissioner. One's the chief fire marshal, and one is the chief of the department.
That makes sense.
Okay, so because we handle sensitive information many times, it's a different type of culture, and the job necessitates a different kind of culture. It necessitates that. Not that the fire department culture is wonderful, but there are, for instance, there's been a couple of times. I've had to arrest firefighters. Two firefighters started a fire once, and burning down the quarters of 21 truck. They poured gasoline on it. They had a falling out with the company, and these two nitwits, they call them nitwits, started a fight. We ended up having to arrest them, and I arrested them because some fire marshals didn't want to do this, but I have the SIU fire marshals that did it. But we arrested them because I can't forgive a firefighter. I can understand doing a homicide before I understand the lighting of fire. Do you understand?
Right.
They've seen what fires do.
They should know better.
Yeah. These two guys started a fire. It's beyond me. So we arrested them. We arrested them. I wanted to. We should clean up our own mess. Mm-hmm. So we've done that. So and when there's some scandal, there's been certain things that happen where we have to directly report to the commissioner and maybe the chief of the department at the same time because we're doing an investigation, and in the past there's been stuff that the New Year's Eve when there was in Staten Island where one firefighter hit another firefighter and ended up in a coma with a chair.
Yep. Okay,
so so if we do get involved in that type of scandal, or just there's certain things we get involved in. Right. So it's but to get away from that. But your original question was what? I think I'm getting off the subject.
No, I didn't care. I was just talking about. I'm trying to remember what the original question was because you were telling a lot of interesting stories. No, I think it was just Gansey's taking over the fire marshal's operation, revitalizing. Which
like I said, he kind of like melded us into the operationally into the fire department. I think he helped foster a relationship between the fire chiefs and the marshals. Mm-hmm. Where as time went on, we respected what they do, and they kind of they find out what we do, and it took a cooperation it took dialogue between operations and the marshal's office, where people trust each other. Remember, we're police. When you became a fire marshal, there were firefighters come to you. So if you want to carry a gun, just go to the police department. Okay. That they did that. They said that to us.
That's in Dennis Smith's book. I kid you not. There's a line in there where the fire marshals come into 82, and he's like, and they're asking questions, and he's saying that as they're asking him the questions, he's thinking to himself as he's looking at their guns, I never wanted to be a marshal. If I wanted to carry a gun, I'd go be a cop.
Yeah. But when firefighters finally got used to it, seeing fire marshals, it was a process. It's an evolutionary process within the department. And today, I think the relationship is very good between us. The more firefighters became fire marshals, the more connection they had with the firehouses and the guys. Their brother firefighters were now fire marshals, and they didn't really change.
Yeah, just the job changed for them.
Job changed, but they were still the same person. Right. So it was kind of an evolutionary process,
I will say I have a question in the chat here, and Stu, I know I saw your first question. I'm going to get to it a little bit later when I talk about 9/11. I didn't forget about it, but this question right here, before I get to some of the other stuff in your career, Lou, with your level of skills and knowledge, Stu says, what would you have liked to have seen incorporated into the fire marshal operations? Great question, Stu.
What was the question? I didn't.
I'll highlight it again. He says, with your level of skills and knowledge, what would you have liked to have seen incorporated into the fire marshal operations?
Well, we did incorporate. What we did was we fostered a relationship with the police department, and we computerized the bureau. We computerize the bureau where you have real time. In fact, at one point, the police department were looking at our computer system, what we did. So you have real time entry into a data system where we can between people you can pick up people's names, building owners from past fires, where the fires were, what were the cause and origins, and it's just as important to have the accidental cause as it is an incendiary cause. The whole job is not revolved around incendiary fires. The incendiary fires are what causes a criminal investigation. But when you have a series, we developed information on halogen bulbs. At one point, halogen bulbs were starting a lot of fires in New York City. The Lionel Hampton fire. He knocked into a lamp and went on his bed and started a fire. That was a high-profile fire. It was started by halogen lamp. They developed rules on the wattage of the halogen bulb, and also put a guard around it. We had fires from extension cords coming from China. They had phony UL labels on them, and they had half the amount of copper they should have had in the extension cords. And people were plugging air conditioners in with them, and they were starting fires. This became an investigation for the Department of Commerce. So accidental causes are very, very important. Appliances, they're bad. Right now, look at the fires being started by these e-bikes, what do you call the lithium batteries, when they're charging them in apartment buildings. I mean, there's more than fires you even hear about. You hear about the high-profile fires, but there's a lot more fires than that. And they're using cheap equipment, or the wrong type of charger, or batteries aren't up to snuff. A lot of things are happening, and we can develop patterns. So once we computerized, we've put out an annual report of cause and origin in the city of New York, and fire prevention education uses those reports to see patterns on how people should be educated. I mean, even looking at fire deaths and why people, closing the door behind you. Early on, we saw how people do not close the door; they left the doors open. They actually propped them open, in fact. And now you have fires going in the hallway, and people are dying in staircases. So that sheds light on fire patterns and patterns of cause and origin, and accidental ones. I'm not talking about just incendiary ones. And that goes to fire safety education, and they use that information. And it's broken down by borough, community boards, types of fires that are on a community board. You can also see problems in a section of the city where you need special attention to certain types of fires. I mean, the 2005 blackout, I was there. I was in the 1977 blackout, which was the busiest day in the job. The building, Brooklyn was burning down. You could be on at the roof of a building and pick out what fire you wanted to go to.
05 or 03? There was a blackout in 05 too?
No, the one after 2001, after the millennium.
03, yeah.
03.
Yeah.
That blackout, it was calm. 77 was a riot.
Yeah.
It was surrealistic. I mean, there were people shooting each other across the street. 03, most of the fires, we had a lot of fires that night. It was misuse of candles. People who weren't used to using candles. If you were in the 1800s, you knew safety with candles. In 03, you have no clue what the safety of candles are. I mean, you're putting candles on top of wooden tables with no support. They would just like fall over. Pets would knock them over. People were putting candles next to curtains. They didn't know how to use candles properly, and that's what was causing a lot of fires. Yeah. Because all of a sudden, people were using candles they weren't used to using.
There's archival footage of that blackout where people are walking in the streets, and this is, as you said, this is like 2 years after 9/11. So people are kind of looking around, like at first before they knew what it was, like, are they coming to get us again? Because people were still kind of on edge and jumpy. This is only the first couple of years after, but once they realized what it was, and that was a hot day too. That was a really hot day. I think people were more just pissed off about the heat.
I'll tell you what, it was a hot day. I was in the streets. I went out in the streets that time. I was going from where fires were just to see what the mood was. public, and it was controlled. People were cooperating with each other. It was great. 77. I'll never forget 77. I was working in 102, and you walked out on Bedford Avenue. All of a sudden, the lights went on. And walked out on Bedford Avenue, and nobody's lights are on. The traffic lights are off. The street lights are off. We were just sitting down for a meal. I come back in, and one firefighter, I forget who it was, said, "You better eat fast, because once we go out, we're never coming back." And those were prophetic words. We never came back that night.
Oh my God.
Dennis Frost, myself, Billy Hewson, Jack Boyle, we were sleeping on a roof of a building at dawn. On the last fire we're at, we're down at exposure 3Z, and Brian O'Flaherty came to relieve us. And we were all like just exhausted. We fell asleep, but we were exhausted for the night. The amount of work we did. I had conjunctivitis in my eyes from the smoke. It was like a battle zone. I've never seen people running around with TVs and couches and tying chains onto storefronts, take the scissor gates off. It was chaos. It was as if you push a switch, and the world went nuts. Right. This was on Broadway in Brooklyn. The last fire we're at, the first two engines we were there without an engine company. So a truck company without an engine company really doesn't do too much, okay? And we started in the basement of a furniture warehouse. And the first due engine was 82 engine. The second due engine came from Staten Island. The dispatcher was literally saying, "Is anybody available in the borough of Brooklyn for a fire?" By the time they came, the building was gone. I mean,
we didn't do so good here. Jesus. I'll hit on a few more things because some of the cases that you had right before your retirement, but just to touch on 9/11 now. That I know where Jerry was because he told me when he was on the show, and he's in the chat. He was at Russo's on the Bay with Billy Ryan because Jimmy Carano, one of his guys in the bomb squad, was getting the Detective of the Month award from his union. He had made a great off-duty rescue of a fellow from a burning vehicle, ironically. So that's where Jerry was. I think the first, and I might have you confused with somebody else I spoke to, but if I have it correct, and if I'm wrong, correct me. When we first spoke off the air, did you say you were golfing that morning?
Yes.
Okay, that was you. It was like a charity thing, right?
Yes, it was a charity thing for a firefighter who died of cancer, right? And it was a once-a-year charity thing. We were at Douglaston Golf Course in Queens, in Douglaston, Queens. And it was a small golf course there. And we were all there, and it was a charity outing. And they give out prizes and stuff. And we had just gotten to the second hole. And I actually was at par 3, and I was on the green. It was like, I might have parred that hole. But I get a beep, and I call up, and the EOC says, "Chief, a plane has gone into the World Trade Center." And I said, "Well, how big a plane is it?" They said, "We don't know." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, what?" I said, "Well, they made it a second alarm or something, I said, "Okay, thank you very much. I'll be responding." So with me in that foursome was Gene Kelty, who was the captain of 10 Engine. Jimmy Kelty, who was in charge of Manhattan, his brother, for the Marshals, and myself. So I turned around and said, "I got to go back in." So I turned around in the golf car. We go up to the first tee. And at the first tee was Don Costello. Don Costello was lieutenant in the police department who was in charge of the mayor's detail of Gracie Mansion. He's on the phone. From that tee box, the only buildings you could see in a distance, because there were trees in the way, was the World Trade Center. At the view, you look towards Manhattan, you saw the World Trade Center. That was it. You couldn't see any of the buildings. And the hole in the World Trade Center was huge. And I'm saying, this is no small plane. This is serious. So I said, I got to go down to my car. So, because I had a company car. So I get down to my car. While I'm down there in a distance, and Jimmy's with me, you hear a whoosh, like a boom in the distance. I look up, and Don Costello's looking at me, and he went like this, too. That means the second plane hit. I said to Jimmy, "This is a terrorist attack." I said, "We got to get going. You better get your brother." because he's the captain, 10 engine, right there at the World Trade Center. So, needless to say, I got in my car, went home, changed my clothes, and got on and the expressway was the police had the expressway clear for emergency vehicles to go into the city. So I went down across 34th Street, down to the West Side Highway, parked my vehicle, put on some turnout gear, my helmet, and walked down to the command post. And there was Pete Gansey at the command post. So it's Bill Feehan was at the command post. Connie Fitzpatrick to the command post. Ray Downey came up to the command post to make a report. And the two buildings here, we're right between the two buildings on West Street, and they're both burning. And Ray Downey actually came up and warned we could possibly have localized collapses here. At that point, Gansey said, let's move the command post uptown a little bit. So we started walking uptown. I started walking uptown anyway. I was on the radio. I didn't want fire marshals to be near the building. As far as I was concerned, we're not supposed to be fighting fires. We're supposed to be investigating fires. Ronnie Bucca was already, he got up to the 78th floor. Him and Oriole Palmer, when that first building collapsed. They were up on the 78th floor, which was the South Tower. And someone said, look, and I turned around and the building kind of leaned a little bit, came back. Anyway, the South Tower collapsed and we ran up. I ran. Gansey then ran into the World Financial Center, Grove Street. They went into the garage. They were able to run into the garage there. I ran north, and then of course the cloud overtakes you, and you hear things hitting around you. You can't see anything, and you're more or less. And I'm not running any further. I'm not running that fast anyway. I'm not the Flash. I'm not going to beat anything. So you more or less resign yourself to hope you don't get hit with something. Basically, that's what you resign yourself to. But and after a while it cleared, you were able to breathe, and you turn around, and there was the collapse. I mean, and I walked back, and I ran into Jerry Sheehan. And there's Jerry. He's all messed up. We all got all that dust on us. And I said, listen, I got to get to a hard line on Vesey Street. Just west, there was a bagel store. I said, I got to call headquarters. I got to get, because my radio wasn't working. The cell phone wasn't working anymore. And I had headquarters say that I want all fire marshals to go down to the Battery Park, south to Battery Park, to do a roll call, basically. That's when the North Tower collapsed, where we were in that store. And of course, the smoke came out and everything. And then, we went out, to try to get people, try to bring people into the store. And I ran across Brian O'Flaherty, who was very badly injured. And I knew Brian from Rescue 1 when he became captain, but also from 102. He was a battalion chief. Mm-hmm. He was really injured, but his shoulder was broken. And we got him to an ambulance, and Pete Hayden. And we got him into the store. We washed his face off with the water, bottled water. And it was a tough day. I mean, you were in shock. I mean, it was, nothing like this ever happened. And nobody expected these towers to collapse. Right. But Jerry and I were together. All of a sudden, here I am, my friend from the police department, and we're both together when the North Tower collapsed. And I was thankful to be with Jerry.
Oh, of course. And you're both missing guys after this, because he's missing Danny Richards from the bomb squad. One of his guys is missing in the collapse in the North Tower. And you're missing Ronnie. Right. And of course, unfortunately, both those guys were killed in the collapse. Ronnie perished in the collapse of the South Tower. Danny Richards, as I've covered many times from my Bomb Squad miniseries, perished in the collapse of the North Tower. He was in the customs house trying to search for people when that building came down. This leads to one of the questions that Stu had asked earlier, and I'll get to it now, buddy. How well did you know Ronnie?
I knew Ronnie. I knew pretty well. He worked in Manhattan. Ronnie was a soldier. He was a Green Beret Reserve. And he had a passion for intelligence. And he kind of always said, they're going to come back to get those towers. The 93 bombing didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Right.
He always felt that those towers were always going to be the target. for terrorists, for terrorism. I mean, it's a symbol of America. It's a symbol of trade. You know.
I think when they had just not to cut you off, just real quick. I think when they had some of the early SOC trainings when SOC was formed in '98, like 98, 99, around there was like a training seminar on counterterrorism with a bullseye target on the World Trade Center.
Well, I'm sure it was. I mean, Ronnie came out of Rescue 1, you know.
Right. Yeah. He was in Rescue 1. Yeah.
He was in Rescue 1. Mm-hmm. He rescued. Yeah. So I knew Ronnie. Ronnie was in very good shape. And him and Oriole Palmer were both runners. And they were both together on the 70th floor. And we had radio transmissions from Oriole Palmer saying that Ronnie, a fire marshal, is with me. And we have multiple 1045 on that floor. Okay? So it was, you know, that day, I mean, Jerry and I were looking up at the tower and watching people, you know, jump out the windows. That was a sad sight to watch people, because we knew they couldn't stay there, but we knew they were going to die. I mean, it was, and it took a long time to fall. So, I mean, you know, you're watching this body fall. It was a very sad and it's a terrible day. I mean, look, it was a terrible day for first responders in general, for the police department, the fire department, EMS. It was a day that was horrific for the city of New York. It was a day that attracted. It's amazing how these incidents attract the worst in people and the best. And for instance, we had our command center because of that day. We had our command. I made a command center for the marshals up by Manhattan College. All right, so that's where we took over a room on the first floor of Manhattan College. One of my marshals, who was, I mean, this guy was in tatters. He was from Manhattan base. He was a fire marshal. They were arrested someone who was picking up fire department fire department equipment and putting it into a van so he could sell it later on. And he's on the phone talking to his partner, saying, "Look, I got this tool, I got that tool. We're gonna make a score here," because guys drop their tools, and these guys are just stealing them. We arrested him, and confiscated his van.
Good.
We arrested a guy who we felt was talking Arabic. Someone and he had a cell phone. We took him and took his cell phone away, and we had the FBI respond to our command center to question him. It was, he was on the phone. I guess he was describing to somebody the thing. So, and then you had people who were there to help. Civilians. Some people take advantage of situations for wrong. I mean, even later on with phony charities, the fire marshals, we had to set up the morgues. Fire marshals have a liaison to the medical examiner's office because whenever as I said, when you have a fire death, the medical examiner's office does an autopsy and they wait for our call to check off the manner of death. Now, the manner of death could be suicide, homicide, accidental, natural causes, but if we say the fire is incendiary, as I said, he would check off homicide. So that starts a homicide investigation when he checks that box off. So we have two fire marshals from headquarters. At the time, it was Conrad Tinney from Rescue, who was a Rescue 3 firefighter, and Conrad and Bobby Green. And they acted, and the day on that day, they went right to the ME's office, and they were the first ones to come in. Were Mike Judge, Pete Yancey, Bill Feehan. When their bodies came in, they were there. So, as I was saying, and I lost track.
How it brought out the best and the worst in people. Yes,
it does. And there were people there that were there to help. They were there. They came to help. There were people. We had the trades. People were selling on eBay, selling purported bones from the World Trade Center. We had to get the state police to go upstate and confiscate. There were people selling badges that they said they came from the World Trade Center. You cannot believe what they do. I just, it's never.
Oh, I can believe it. People are scumbags.
I mean, are you using a book? See, now I couldn't use my word.
Well, no, that's not a profane word.
It's not a profane word. Okay. Anyway, so it was a tough day.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. A tough day, and it's a tough day to this day. It's a tough day.
Right. Now, of course, and we're coming up on 21 years this Sunday of that day, a couple of days from now. A couple of things I'll ask you about, then we'll get to the concluding segment. 05, we already covered 03, the blackout. 05, there was Black Sunday, where you had 3 firemen. Well, no, there's two incidents in the same day. 2 firemen get killed in the Bronx. Another one gets killed in Brooklyn from Ladder 103.
That was from 103.
Yeah, Richie Sclafani got killed in that one, and Kurt Myron and John Ballou, I think was his name, got killed in the last one.
John Ballou, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about first Black Sunday in January of 05, and the last one, big one that you had before your retirement, which was the Deutsche Bank fire in 07.
Well, I mean, the Father's Day fire was something special.
Well, that one, yeah. You investigated that one?
Yes, I was there.
Okay, you tell me about that one too. In June of 01.
The Black Sunday fire. Well, the cause and origin of both these fires were accidental. I mean, it was nothing, crazy about that. Homicide, but there was nothing crazy about it. They were accidental fires. It was more of a fire safe. The fire safety, the division of fire. What do we call it? The fellows who investigate procedures. Following procedures in the
fire. I think it is a safety division.
Yeah, safety division. Yeah. Their investigation was very important in the Father's Day fire. And I'm not going to step on their investigation. They produced an investigation of what happened there. The fire in Brooklyn. All of a sudden, I mean, I responded. It was snowy that day too. I had to dig out my car to get up there. As I left the Black Sunday, there was a firefighter death in Brooklyn, and now I go to the Brooklyn fire. I'm the highest ranking person there at that fire. So when they brought the family in, the mayor hadn't gotten there yet. A lot of dignitaries had not gotten there, and when I was the chief fire marshal, we had the protocol on how to take care of firefighter bodies of line of duty deaths. And the protocol started actually with Howard Safer and John Drennan.
Watt Street.
In Watt Street. I was the commanding officer of Manhattan at the time. And Howard Safer used to visit Drennan in the hospital in the burn center. And he said to me, Louis, and we had done the fireworks task force with the commissioner had me do the fireworks task force. So I was familiar with Safer. And like I said, Safer understood law enforcement. He did. And he said, when John Drennan, we have to take care of the body when he passed away. He's going to pass away soon, in other words. And he said, we're going to have to take care of him with dignity. I said, I'll take care of it. We're going to treat him with dignity. So I get word that he passed away. So I go there with a couple of teams of fire marshals, and we're going to transport the body. Now, my idea was to transport the body, and we would have an escort. And then the fire marshal would stay with the body overnight. They would be there to identify the body and witness the autopsy. Okay? Which is what they do now. All right? But that protocol had not developed yet. So here I am in the hospital, the burn center, and the morgue wagon comes. All right. So I said, all right, you're here to pick up John Drennan, the body. I said, the firefighter said, yeah, we want to go directly to morgue under escort. We're going to escort you to cars. And the guy said, and the fellow says, you're the driver. I mean, there's nothing wrong. He's not doing anything wrong. He's just following his procedure. He said, no, I have to pick up a floater in the Bronx. I said, you what? I said, no, this is a line to be death. We're going to take it. He goes, no, I have to go to the Bronx, pick up a floater. I said, well, show me the back of your rig, the wagon. And he's got bodies piled up on the floor, on shelves, on the side. They're all in body bags. And I'm saying, I'll tell you what, we're not putting him in there. We're not putting John Brennan in there. So I said, you can go. Just go ahead and do what you got to do. Then I approached the EMS boss that's there, and I said, I want to commandeer an ambulance. We want to go to the morgue. We have a line of duty death, an honored firefighter officer. We want to take him to the morgue for an autopsy, which is they have to do that, by the way, by law. And he says to me, no, we don't transport bodies. That's what the EMS boss says to me. I said, are you sure you can't just do this? He said, no, it's not part of our protocol. I called Safer. And I said, Commissioner, this is a situation. Someone has to intervene here. Sure enough, he intervened, and guess what? The ambulance took John Brennan's body to the morgue, and under escort, fire marshal escort. Right? Fire marshals are we're very flexible. We're not stuck to a firehouse or a rig or overtime. We have cars, and we have a lot of flexibility. So we escorted him, and fire marshal stayed with him. That was the protocol that's been followed ever since for any line of duty death. The fire marshals go to the hospital, take care of the body, make sure it's cleaned up with the chief medical officer, which was Kerry Kelly during my time, and the safety division, collecting clothes and masks and whatever they have to equipment. And we take care of the body. And I would, if I was there, I would bring the family. If they wanted to see the person, I would bring the family there to take a look at the body, if it's appropriate, depending on the shape of the body. And you're in the room. I mean, I'm in the room with the mayor and everything, and I assure them that their loved one will be taken care of with dignity. Very important for the family to hear that. You find out how important it is, and different families take things differently. It was, but that became our protocol. And to this day, that is the protocol.
It's a good one. And it's a good one. And that was pre-merge, because you guys hadn't even merged with EMS yet. That was a couple years before.
I don't know if we had it or not. I mean, who merged it? Was it
Safer merge? That was basically his last act before he became the police commissioner. He merged EMS with you guys in '96.
Well, that was probably. Well, I mean, when did that? Let me see. When did
Drennan was 94.
94. Yeah, it was pre-merger, but he had enough weight to be able to.
Of course.
He had enough weight. He had enough authority to tell some boss over there. Yeah.
And when he was on the show, I told him that was really like as fire commissioner, that was his first big test, because he hadn't even been commissioner for more than a couple months. That fire was what, March of '94, right?
Yeah. He was new as a commissioner. Yeah.
Just come in.
Yeah.
Man. Well, time has flown by, God. And before one more question before I get to the concluding segment. 2008, I believe, is when you put in your papers. Now, you'd had quite the adventure. I mean, we're talking about stands for the 1 year that you've been laid off from 75 to 76, basically 35 years. Most of them, as I was saying when I was introducing you originally, as a marshal, 26 of them. When did you start thinking about, you know what, time to go? When did it first enter your mind?
The Deutsche Bank fire. The Deutsche Bank fire.
Right.
I was with the widow. I mean, I said to myself, it's time to go. I had accomplished everything I wanted to do. We increased what we did. We increased the training in the bureau. We were getting along with the police department. We did the MOU. We had computerized the bureau. We were in charge of security for the fire department. We took over the badge desk. We were in charge of security for the entire fire department. So we took on a lot of roles there, and we gained the respect of operations, and we were getting along with the police department. And the last, when that was the last, that I said to myself, it's time for me to go. It's time. You know when it's time. Yeah. There's no, I can't, I was at, and the fire, that fire was, it was a tough fire. It was tough to see. I mean, these poor fellows, and the standpipe was They had taken apart the standpipe in the basement, and they were pouring water into the Siamese. It was just filling up the basement, basically. It was. I just decided, there's nothing more for me to accomplish, and I had seen enough line of duty deaths, basically.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And that bank, that bank, people forget, or they might remember, depending on their understanding of the situation. It's right by the Trade Center, and it was heavily damaged by the collapses.
Yes, it was.
So
yes, it was considered a contaminated building.
Really,
asbestos and stuff like that.
right.
And there was an investigation into that.
Yeah, I think people went to jail, right?
Some people were. Yeah, they actually were. We had fire marshals and cops doing a joint investigation. There were money laundering stuff there. There were missing monies. We tried to, like the Father's Day fire. We knew what happened and how it happened, and I felt. We went to the. I mean, I wanted to build a case against. They circumvented certain fire safety protocols in the building that caused this explosion. Helped cause the explosion, and where they stored flammables in the building. The young man was an accident. The young man started the fire. 2 kids started the fire by accident, and myself and Bill Feehan had to face the families, explain to them, we know how the fire started. We can't say this child, it wasn't a child, it was 14, young teenager, didn't start the fire. It was an accident where the fire started. And the circumstances of how, it's a complicated investigation. It's a complicated cause and origin. But basically, they had propped open a fire separation door that's on rails, that's on a weight in the basement of this hardware store, because the basement had to be separated because of the flammable, but they propped it open. So flammable vapors migrated to another section of the store. And Harry Ford, I know Harry Ford. He was in a one-way truck. He's one of the people who died. I knew him when I was in Rescue 1.
He was in Rescue 4, right? Harry Ford?
Yeah, well, he went to Rescue 4, but he was in one-way when I was in 102.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And the flammable vapors migrated when they finally, it was a difficult door to take, and it was difficult. The circumstances were such that the kid was reaching. They were rummaging for paint cans because they wanted to do graffiti. Mm-hmm. There was no separation between the backyard of this apartment building and the backyard of the hardware store, and the kids were used to going back there to get these paint cans for graffiti. But on top of a bunch of boxes was a 1 gallon plastic container of gasoline that they used because they used to repair lawnmowers. So when they were rummaging through the boxes, it fell, and it fell on a ramp. The liquid went down the ramp underneath the door, which was hard, and right as soon as you went through the door was a hot water heater with an open flame. Just look at the circumstances here.
Right.
And it lit the flammable liquid up. Now you got a fire, and you have aerosol cans, you have turpentine cans. It's a hardware store with all this stuff. So the cause of the fire, the ignition source, and we had to explain it to the DA's office and explain to us, to the chief of detectives. Bill Lee was chief of detectives.
Yeah.
He took the tour with me, and I explained to him what happened. It was really an accident. I'm not gonna, the people are saying, well, maybe we can charge the kids with trespass. There was no trespass charge. It wasn't posted property, and there was no fence between the 2 backyards.
Well, basically, what was it? Murphy's Law? Everything that could go wrong did go wrong with that one?
Absolutely. And you find in firefighter deaths, in deaths in general, it's a series of circumstances, be it all small, but they all work together for some reason at one point in time, and they cause a tragedy. I know people who've died in fires by making the wrong move, by just stepping the wrong way.
Yeah.
They were 3 feet from safety, but they went the wrong way, and they ended up dying. So In this case, when they took the windows and they provided oxygen and air into the Harry Ford took windows and they were able to open the door. All of a sudden, the oxygen started fire. They had the right mixture of flammable vapors that caused the explosion. Okay, the oxygen from the air, the mixed, and they reached the critical limits for an explosion, which the facade of the building came down. Poor Harry was underneath all these bricks.
And John Downing and Brian Fahey. John Downing was from 163, I think, and then
I didn't know those fellows. I knew Harry.
Yeah, and Brian was another Rescue 4 guy. Brian and Harry on that day, June was Father's Day of 2001, June 2001. I know that much. They were on that one, and I remember talking to some of the guys from Squad 288 because they had been down the street on an unrelated call. It was like a gas odor in a supermarket, and then they went down there. And, not only did that kill those 3 guys, Dennis Murphy, who was the original captain of 288, that basically ended his career, tore his ACL in that one. A few guys suffered some serious concussions, I think, in that one. My buddy Kevin Kubler, even though it didn't end his career, he tore his ACL in that one. And Chief Gansey, quick note on that before I get to the concluding segment. That day he responded. Danny Nigro, when he was on the show, was telling me Chief Gansey was trying to go down the hole to make rescues in like shorts and golf shoes. That's how much he cared about his guys. He called it basically, as somebody said of him, his firefighters were like his children. And that day he lost 3.
Well, I had tickets for Yankee Stadium to take my father, and I just dropped them off for my brother, and I went to the fire. Now, I want to cover one of the just the.
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine. I don't care.
The importance of this idea about a fire as an incident without an investigation. We had a couple of examples of that. One example was we had a fire in Breezy Point years ago, and it was a tragic fire because a precinct commander died. Police precinct commander died in that fire, and his youngest son. Now, Breezy Point is like. It's a civil service ghetto, more or less. I mean, there's only firefighters there. Right. So I respond. I was the assistant chief fire marshal. I respond because it's actually a death of a member of service of the police department, and a commanding officer of precinct. I respond there, and a guy named Simonetti was there. He was the first deputy.
Tony. He was Safer's first deputy. Yeah.
Right. So now he's there. Now I get out of my car, and half the people are coming up to me because they know me. And they all know what caused the fire. I haven't even gone in that place. This is how urban legends start. This is why you have to have fire investigations. They all knew this fella. He had recently lost his wife to cancer. He was frequenting a local bar in the evenings. He was smoking a lot, drinking. So they're assuming that he started the fire. People came up to me and said, "We know what it is. Smoking kills." Tonight he was over. By the way, at Breezy Point, you can't go anywhere without everybody knowing where you are. Okay. So
and what you're doing.
So, and they're all telling me, it's smoking kills. This poor guy was depressed. He's smoking. He might have been drinking too much. Might have fell asleep on a couch. They all have. I said, "Listen, I haven't even gone in there yet. Let me go in there and then let me look at it with the fire marshals. And they will determine what the cause is. This is all rumor. You understand this?" I told them, I straightened everybody out. I said, "Let's stop the rumors, okay?" The 2 other children were rescued out of a bedroom window by some fellows who put up a ladder. The 2 surviving children. And so I walk in there. So there he is, this poor fellow, burned badly. He was slumped over the couch. The dog was right next to him, so I can't believe the dog died with him. But that's not where the fire started. The fire started in the kitchen. Not only did the fire start in the kitchen, it started in a dishwasher. So we confiscated the dishwasher, and the police department is supplying us. This is where cooperation. They supplied us a transportation for the dishwasher. We transported it to Queens Base. We had engineers look at it. Well, it so happens the dishwasher was on a recall. It so happens there was a defect in the dishwasher, and it would short out. The control panel would short out and start fires. So this fella. So Without the investigation, everybody's assuming what happened. But that's not what happened. What happened was an appliance malfunctioned. That's why an investigation is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
And there's an old saying, to your point, a lie makes its way around the world twice before the truth has a chance to put its boots on.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it's important for people to know what, as I said, as a firefighter, there were all incidents, and my job was to put out the fire and rescue people and search and have fun. As a fire investigator, it's a serious business. And it's serious when you make a call on a fire. It's serious business, and and you can end up in court, either civil court, criminal court, whatever. You're living by what you write down and the witnesses, and it's an intro. I can only tell you it was a very interesting job, and I never regret a moment in the fire department. From putting out fires to doing fire investigation, it was a great career,
I would say. And now we can get to that concluding segment, the way that we always end. The rapid fire, of course, 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you. You could say pass if you want. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
First, funniest colleagues you ever worked with?
All right. Right. There's a lot of comedians in firehouses, okay? But the people I had the pleasure of working with, that I had fun with, in the fire department in firehouse was Jack Boyle. He was my best friend in the fire department. We were firefighters in 102 and Rescue 1 together, and we had a good time. In the fire marshals was James Kelty. We went out together. He ended up being commanding officer of Manhattan, and we had a good time together. Of the people who really, really made the job work, Jack McCauley. I mean, it's countless amount of people. Richie McKay, I must thank him for his contributions to advancing the bureau and what we became. Nobody does this by themselves. You need a team, which is the beauty of working together, and cooperation with the police department. Everything should work as a team, I believe, anyway.
Second, best advice anyone ever gave you?
The best advice? Stay there. My investigating officer in the PD, when he told me, you want to go to police academy, he said, you're better off stay there. That's the best piece of advice.
He ain't lying. Third, best case you ever worked, where it had a really good outcome.
All right, there's two besides the 4th alarm homicide in the Bronx, 2 cases in Manhattan. One was the Biltmore Theater fire, where a fellow bought the theater, thought he was going to get the air rights. He couldn't get the air rights because the theater was landmarked inside and out. They set up. I mean, they set the fire up with gasoline and timing devices. But they put the gasoline in garbage cans, and the only place that had a sprinkler in this theater, it was on stage, and in the first floor had sprinklers. So they lit the gasoline up, and it started a fire. The fire department got there real quick, and the sprinklers were on. We got the fire, so you had a lot of damage. But now the theater can't be open, right? Mm-hmm. So and it was an incendiary fire. I was in the Special Investigations Unit as a fire marshal in Manhattan. I was investigating for 3 months. During the investigation, I happened to subpoena. There was a mortgage on the building. And like I said, they thought he was going to get the air rights. He couldn't get the air rights. And the mortgage was not a bank mortgage. It was from a factor. And factors are people who lend money. Usually factors lend money to people in the garment industry because they tie them over while they're developing their designs or whatever. Anyway, so I subpoena the records, and lo and behold, I get this guy's tax returns for 5 years. Now, you don't get tax returns usually, but I have them. They turned them over to me. I'm looking at tax returns. This guy owns $10 to $15 million worth of property in New York City, and his tax returns are $25,000 a year. Okay? Now, I can't get him for the arson because It was a key job. Too many people had keys. I interviewed people in all the departments. I went to the locksmiths. It was just, I couldn't narrow it down to him. But I know, I mean, he just got the insurance on the property. It was a setup. So
right.
I went to the IRS. I had all these boxes of financial, and I'm not an accountant. I said, let me tell you something. I can't get this guy for the Harston, but there's something wrong with his tax returns. A year later, they invited me to a sentencing. He was being sentenced for 5 years in jail for tax evasion and money laundering. So he didn't arrest him for arson, but he was arrested by the feds.
That's like Capone. Like, they know Capone did worse things, but they got him on tax evasion.
The other one was the Holland House Hotel fire. Mm-hmm. That was a third or fourth alarm. There were two fellas, and this is where I talk about cooperation. This gang of thugs, three fellas from the Coney Island projects, got women in the Holland House who were crack addicts to begin with to sell crack for them. All right, that was their business. And these guys, you're talking about thugs. You're talking about young males that are in their 20s, been in jail before. They're all, they were little criminals, okay? And so the women that they had selling for them never really gave them the amount of money they wanted because they would use their own stuff. So this one witness, they burnt out her room, which ended up burning out the floor. She didn't have the money, so they beat her up. And this guy, Bourne, one of the partners in this little enterprise, there was a guy named Anthony Barnes and a guy named Jeffrey Bourne. And one guy was called Science and one guy was called Bourne Free, okay? And they put a gun to her little girl's head. They threatened the little girl with a gun that she didn't come up with the money the next day. They were going to shoot her. Now, next day came Science, guy Anthony Barnes, who's on parole for robbery and assault. He comes by himself and beats her up. I'm trying to think of her name now. Beats her. She's a great witness, by the way. Beats her up and lights up her room. Of course, the door's open, takes the whole floor. Okay, and Rakia was saved. Rakia was Clarice. It was Clarice, and her daughter was named Rakia. And Rakia was she's about 12, 13. She was the adult because her mother was a drug addict. And she was taking care of her little brother all the time. So she was actually the adult in the family. And she used to get the food for her mother and everything because they used to come with food to the place, you know. So we went to all we knew was their nicknames when we went to the Coney Island Project. And we went to the housing PD, the Coney Island Project detectives. Let me tell you, what a wealth of information. They knew all the families, all the kids. They know everybody in the project is doing something.
Housing was great.
And all I did was come up with the nicknames, and they had them. They go through a nickname file. They had Anthony Barnes. They had Jeffrey Bourne. They had them. So we ended up arresting Anthony Barnes. He went to report to his parole office. Well, we got him right outside. You know, we knew who he was. We arrested him. He ended up going to trial. He went away for, I think I went away for like 11 to 20 years, something like that. Jeffrey Bourne Free. We went to look for him in Coney Island. He jumped out the second floor window. We went in one side of the apartment. He jumped out. His family was like running interference. I regret not pursuing him further. I had to go back, you know, because we were spread out, you know. I mean, it was a Manhattan case, but I'm doing something going out. He ended up killing. You know, I get a call from the precinct, Coney Island, another Brooklyn precinct. He was accused of shotgunning a mother, a child, her daughter, and the grandmother, executing them because of the same reason he was threatening Rakia, because they didn't come up with the money for the drugs. And he killed all three of them. Killed them all. And I regret, and, you know, the cops called me up. They said, you know where he is? because they knew I had a case. And I said, no, I don't know where he is. They found him, though, in North or South Carolina, and they arrested him. But I always think to myself, if I would have gotten him that day, he wouldn't have been able to kill somebody. I mean, I'm not, it's just, but those were bad guys.
Very bad guys.
Yeah, those are bad guys. I mean, there are people, and there are, like I said, the people who it's crime of passion, and they're doing it. And I'm not going to get into it. There's serial arsonists. There are people who are serial arsonists also, and they're a different breed. But I'm not going to get. We don't. I'm taking up a lot of time here.
That's all right.
But all right. So what was the next thing?
Fourth, favorite bar or restaurant in New York City?
Well, that's easy. That was Elaine's.
Yes. Lanes. That was a spot. If there's anything I would love to do, it'd be go back in time to like 1994, 1995, share a table with Lenny Levitt, Bill Bratton, John Miller, and John Timoney, and Jack.
They were all there. Timoney, all of them were there. I used to hang around there. It was a great place to be. I loved Elaine. Elaine Kaufman was a very close friend of mine.
Yep.
In fact, after she died, when the night it closed, I had a table of 10. It was my birthday. It actually closed on my birthday. It was my 62nd birthday. And I had a table there with my friends and Elaine's. It was a very important place for me. I mean, you met a lot of people, a lot of intelligent people, a lot of smart. Some people, he goes, it was great. It was that was my favorite hangout of all time.
And fifth and finally, if you can grab a new fire marshal, I'll change the question up a little bit. If you can grab a new fire marshal that just came out of the school, given your experiences as a marshal, what advice would you give him or her?
I would say, take the job seriously, learn your craft, learn how to articulate your craft to basically you have to sell your case sometimes to the DA. All right. Cooperate with the police department, make friends in the police department, make friends with other investigators, federal friends. I mean, right? I have fire marshals in the JTTF now after 9/11. We have a fire marshal detail with the commissioner. They're their advanced team. These are all happening. And one of the other things we did, they have uniforms. Fire marshals have uniforms now. After 9/11, so because they were going to so many funerals, they were wearing their firefighter uniform. We developed a uniform for fire marshals. And the patch on that uniform is a round patch, has a scales justice, flames in the scales justice, and has the words Veritas ex Cineribus. Now, prior to 9/11, I was talking to Michael Judge, and I said, really, we're talking about if we ever had a patch, I would like to have a nice saying on it, in Latin. We're thinking about myself, McCahey, a few people, McCauley. And I said, me call up. We want to say truth from the ashes. So I call up Father Judge. I said, Mike, can we help? How do you say this in Latin? He says, Louis, I'm not the greatest Latin in the world. He said, let me consult some Latin experts. He called me back. And he says, there's a million ways to say what you want to say in different ways in Latin. But which are Veritas ex Cineribus, because the word Cineribus relates to ashes, like from an archaeological dig. Ashes is evidence. And that's on the patch. So Michael Judge actually gave us our saying, But I would tell him, take your job seriously. Learn your job, learn your craft, that it's an important job. And I would say this to anybody coming on the job, or the fireman, I don't care where they come, study. Learn as much as you can. Study for tests. Study just so you become proficient in your job. And also, as a fire marshal, there's always a job waiting for you on the outside. Because you're wanted, your expertise is wanted in the courts. So you can be you can go, look at Billy Ryan's got his agency. I mean, the fire marshals, they're cause and origin experts. So there's plenty of opportunity. If they want to start their own business, there's plenty of opportunity.
The Ryan Investigative Group. I have to get you. You open the door, so I have to give a shameless plug there for my buddy.
Yeah, that's okay.
Ryan. The Ryan Investigative Group. Call them up, Google them, and find them. Before we go, this has been a great show. Stick around. We'll say goodbye off the air. Is there any shout outs you want to give to anyone or anything before I say goodbye to the audience?
Well, I just want to say thanks. Thank you for the fellows in the fire department. I never regretted a moment in that department. It was the best job in the world, the best career in the world I ever had. And a shout out to Rich McKay and Bobby Burns, the new chief fire marshals. Jack McCauley, who recently died. He was responsible for computerizing the bureau. These people made my job. I might have been a chief fire marshal. I could not have been a good chief fire marshal without them.
I think that's the perfect way to end. Like I said, stick around. We'll say our goodbyes off the air. Just want to give a special shout out to all my fire department, police department friends, Port Authority Police, NYPD, FDNY, EMS. I know this Sunday is going to be a tough day for all you guys, but just want to say I'm thinking of you.
Well, can I just add one thing? Jerry Sheehan.
Yeah, of course.
My best friend in the police department, Jerry. I appreciate our time as investigators together, and I appreciate our time as bosses together. Thank you.
No problem. Good man, Jerry Sheehan. I've been a guest in the show. So like I was saying, just a shout out to all you guys. I know it's a tough weekend, but you guys are in my thoughts and the memories of your colleagues that gave all that day and those who have died since then. 9/11 related illnesses is certainly not forgotten on us. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, another volume of the Best of the Bravest. For you guys that follow the Getting Salty podcast, it's Ron Zoni, it's Ron Hiraba. He was staying alive in engine 225, as he told me. And then, as he also added, he was in heaven at ladder 107. So he'll tell me all about it for volume 27 of the Best of the Bravest, interviews with the FDNY's elite. In the meantime, this has been volume 26 of the Best of the Bravest, interviews with the FDNY's elite. On behalf of retired FDNY Fire Marshal Lou Garcia, I'm Mike Colón, and we will see you next time. Have a great weekend, everybody, and stay safe. Good night.
Good night.